All right, here we go. Today we have the infamous Martin Shkreli. Welcome to Vlad TV.
Thank you for having me.
Man, we've heard a lot about you over the years, but no one's ever really gotten your full story. So I want to start in the very, very beginning. So you were born and raised in Brooklyn.
Yes, sir.
And your parents are Albanian immigrants.
Yes.
Okay. And they worked as janitors?
All kinds of jobs. I think my dad was a superintendent. Mom did sanitation, janitorial work for a long time, but dad did all kinds of stuff.
Okay. So you grew up working class, poor?
Somewhere in the middle of those two.
Somewhere in the middle. Okay.
I didn't realize it at the time, by the way. I thought we were, I didn't think we were rich, but, as a kid, you don't really understand money,
Yeah. Well, what part of Brooklyn?
Sheepshead Bay, Midwood, Flatbush, that kind of area.
Okay. Now, you were raised Catholic.
Yes.
But you don't believe in God.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. Ever since my dad died, it's changed, right? Once you lose somebody close to you like that, you start to wonder, and you start to hope too. So I don't know how I feel. I think as a scientist, it's extremely unlikely.
Yeah.
But as a human, you hope it's true, and you kind of feel a little bit that it's true.
No, I interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson not so long ago. We talked about it. And he goes, well, from everything he's ever learned, it's hard to really prove there's an intelligent force behind all this randomness that occurs. And I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I'm in the software world now, and I do a lot of work on artificial intelligence. And interestingly, there's a lot of philosophical aspects of that. And one of the things that people wonder about is whether that randomness, which, in science is often called entropy, where that entropy sort of self-assembles into intelligence, no matter what it is. And we sort of see that, look, our Earth started as this fiery mass, right? And it kind of slowly but surely we're here, and we're having, whether you want to call us intelligent or not, it's up to you, but we slowly sort of became intelligent.
Okay, so you're growing up in Brooklyn, and you were a smart kid in high school. Well, all through school.
Yeah, I actually sort of took a downward slide in high school to a certain extent because I wanted to do music, I wanted to do sports, I wanted to do Wall Street. I wanted to stop being in school. I had enough of being like a prodigy, and I just wanted to live the real world.
Okay, because you were going to high school, but then you dropped out?
I did, kind of. It was complicated. I went to this very special school here in Manhattan called Hunter College High School. I would end up being their largest donor. And I went to school on the Upper East Side, and the school gives you a lot of freedom. So you can kind of do what you want. And it's like that old saying that you can give somebody enough rope to hang themselves, and if you give enough freedom to somebody, they can go overboard. And for me, I just, like I said, I had enough of academics proving how smart you are for the rest of your life. Didn't sound that much fun. And I started to get into other things that, for example, I played guitar. I was in a band. You can take that, as a big part of your show. You can take music and take it to the wildest heights, right? You can't take high school to its wildest heights.
Well, no, but from high school, you can go to Harvard or MIT and, and then that leads you into all types of interesting places.
It's about a 30-year ride, right? And I think
not a 30-year ride, but even 4 years of going to Harvard will put you in a different space.
I went to college, I think that so many people who are younger, they ask themselves, people who are precocious or ambitious, they say, why not me? Why can't I be Billie Eilish? Or why can't I be, pick your favorite rapper? And I think there are people like that. They get a little stir crazy in a place like high school where it's like, look, you're normal. You're like everyone else. Sit and learn. And it's like, no, I'm going to do me, and I'm going to be the greatest I can be, and screw all you guys. And I think there's some people who just live their life that way. And some people, as you know, they live their life on the streets too, and they issue it all.
Yeah. I went to UC Berkeley. I was a computer science major. And, I then went into music, but then launching Vlad TV was kind of a full circle moment because all the stuff I learned about computers and architecture and programming, now we use it, as a tech company as much as a media company.
Yeah, I don't necessarily opine on whether high school or college is right for everyone or no one or whatever, but, I think there are people that feel shackled by it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in high school, were you mostly interested in chemistry or finance?
It's hard to say. I liked finance. It's funny. I learned it from an old guy in our building in Brooklyn, and he would teach me about stocks, and I thought it was fascinating because it was like sports. Every kid likes sports, and I'd watch the Knicks, and I'd see them. This guy scored this many points. This guy scored that many. Ewing, Oakley, all these guys. from the 90s. And then I'd look at stocks and I'd be like, oh, well, this company has this much earnings and that company has that much revenue. And these fascinating stories that you could really get involved in, and someone would pay you for it, as opposed to sports where you pay them. So, it's I thought it was great. I also love medicine, biology, and chemistry, and nerd stuff like that, computer science. I programmed when I was a kid and just loved it. And, so I didn't love the other parts of high school, the homework, again, the constant sort of, I guess like yardstick that was constantly applied to everyone.
Yeah, well, your dad gave you George Soros's book, The Alchemy of Finance. I just bought that book, actually, as I was doing research. I'm a big George Soros fan, but, Soros has an interesting kind of, name where they feel he's secretly behind
People
all
don't
these
understand
massive movements.
Yeah.
He's the Illuminati and so forth.
You got to pick somebody, right? And it's the same thing in my story. We'll talk about, I'm sure, later. Mm-hmm. If you need a boogeyman, you sometimes don't necessarily find the perfect boogeyman. You got to force fit somebody into being that boogeyman. Right. And Soros is a perfect example. Thiel is another one. Many others.
Okay, so you graduate high school and you go to Baruch College?
Yes.
But then you started working for a hedge fund.
Yeah, I worked for Jim Cramer, the guy on TV who yells and screams and goes crazy.
Cramer, okay.
Yeah, he's awesome, yeah.
Okay. That's Cramer Berkowitz?
Yep.
Cramer Berkowitz and Company.
Yep.
So that's the actual Jim Cramer on TV.
A lot of people don't know. He had a hedge fund for many years. He actually had one of the best hedge funds.
Really?
People kind of clown on him now because what they do is, it's kind of like almost like Trump. It's really sad, actually, because they take he's on TV all day long. Mm-hmm. And people ask him, what do you think of NVIDIA? What do you think of Intel? What do you think of Microsoft? And it's nonstop, right? Mm-hmm. And he kind of has to answer because that's his shtick. We all have a shtick in life. I'm the bad guy. And that's my shtick. But for Cramer, he's the stock guy. And, if he says, you know what, I don't know, that's not a great shtick.
No.
And so he has to just sort of come up with stuff. And Jim is a brilliant man. He was Harvard Law, great hedge fund. It's not easy to be great at hedge funds. And I have nothing but great things to say about him. He taught me what hard work was all about. The guy worked from 4 a.m. To 4 p.m., standing, sweating, just screaming, trying to make this pile of money larger. Not a great, philosophically fulfilling job maybe, but he was damn good at it. And then he goes on TV, and again, every second he's got to answer something about a stock, and he's like 50-50, because who else, that's how it is.
Yeah.
Most people are. The best people are like 55%. So they'll basically tape the stuff that he gets wrong, and they'll be like, ha, look, Cramer got it wrong. Yeah. And it's like, dude, even the best traders, Steve Cohen or whomever, they get half their stuff wrong too.
Well, what exactly is the difference between a hedge fund and, let's say, like a mutual fund or like an ETF for that matter? Because from what I understand, I remember, I'm a big stock guy myself. Most of the money I made, went from Vlad TV into the stock market, into individual stocks, which I've done extremely well with. But I remember, I think it was Warren Buffett had like an ongoing bet that these top hedge funds couldn't beat the S&P 500.
Correct, yeah.
And most times he would win. You see what I'm saying? So what's the point of going with a hedge fund as opposed to just going to S&P 500 where you don't have to think about anything?
Right. Well, Warren Buffett actually had a hedge fund too in the 60s. So it was called WEB. Almost nobody knows about this. And in that fund, he bought Berkshire Hathaway. And then he basically told everyone, instead of giving you your money back, I'm going to give you Berkshire Hathaway stock.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway.
Which worked out pretty well for all those people.
Worked out pretty well. But, for a while, about 8 or 9 years, he ran this hedge fund. And actually, if you really want to treat like a gem, you can go back and look at the letters he wrote to his partners, his investors, but way back when, and he's a 20-year-old man at this point. And he's writing to his investors, hey, these are the stocks I bought this year, these are the stocks I bought last year. And people love to read his annual letters that he did for Berkshire. But the letters before that are actually also really interesting too. And, your readers you can get rich just studying Warren Buffett, I think.
I got rich studying Warren Buffett. That's actually was my actual strategy. I read The Snowball.
Snowball's the number one
book. And then once I read The Snowball, then I realized that he learned from Benjamin Graham. So then I read The Intelligent Investor.
Yeah.
And then there was another book that I read that Charlie Munger always recommended. It was When to Sell.
Interesting.
And I forgot what it was. The guy had like one of the biggest funds in the world. His son took over. What the hell?
Phil Fisher.
Fisher, exactly. So Fisher basically said,
Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits.
Exactly.
It's one of my favorite books. Yeah.
that book. And that book taught me when to sell, which is almost never.
Fantastic book.
Yeah. Basically said that unless you feel you no longer are confident in a company, you should not sell.
Guys in prison would come to me all the time with all kinds of ideas. But a lot of them would just come to me and say, Martin, how do I become rich? And I would say, do you really want to do this? And most people would say, of course I do. And I'd say, some of them I believed, some of them I didn't. I said, I'd hand them a copy. I'd buy them out of my own pocket. I'd hand them a copy of Snowball. I'd be like, This is what you got to read.
Yep.
You know, it's not going to teach you how to make money, but it's going to put you in that mindset that's just as important. It's not a how-to book, but, you know, like most biographies, it's not a how-to book. But
No, listen, when I learned that Buffett made most of his fortune by buying Coca-Cola in the 80s.
Amex, all that stuff.
What do you put, like $100 million into it or something like that? And I'm like, oh, here's a company that everyone's heard of. I always assumed it was some of these esoteric companies that no one's ever heard of and it's insider trading. And it's like, we all could have bought Coca-Cola that year.
Yeah.
But he did. And now I think he makes as much like from dividends.
Just the dividend, yeah.
Every year from Coca-Cola, he makes like $100 million a year just in dividends from
Amex,
Coca-Cola.
you name it. Like the whole portfolio is
crazy.
great. And
it's absolutely crazy.
It's more intricate than I think it looks like, but as you know. But anyway, hedge funds, the idea behind the hedge fund is really interesting. So from the 60s to the 90s, the idea behind the hedge fund was that you were a maverick, crazy person that didn't want to work on Wall Street. And you said, fuck all of you guys. Can I say that?
Yeah,
I don't sure care. Fuck all of you guys, Goldman Sachs, UBS. And it's just like the high school parable we just talked about. I'm not going to high school. I'm starting a hedge fund. And people said, are you nuts? You're at Goldman Sachs. Why would you do this? Et cetera. And you said, I don't want to do that. I want to be rich. You know, those guys will pay me $1 million a year, $2 million a year. If I become top brass, maybe more. But I don't want to do that. I want to be rich now. And so you go around and you basically tell all the rich people you know, and eventually it became endowments and universities and companies and things like that. But it started out as a secret underground way to make rich people really rich. It was like a secret sauce. And people would say, oh, I've got 10 million with Cramer, or I got 20 million with Cohen. And very rich people like David Geffen, who you know all about, and other people like that. David Geffen's a huge hedge fund. David Geffen made more money in hedge funds than he made in music.
Really?
Yeah.
He had his own hedge fund?
No, he invested in people's hedge funds, like Cramer and others.